Okay, hi everybody, and welcome, welcome Oliver. Thank you very much for joining us remotely. We're running a little bit late today, I think, as everybody can see, but we're going to start with my greeting and a bit of a summary. Whoa, now that mic is really working. My greeting and a bit of a summary from yesterday, and then we'll go into our session. So. I offer the land acknowledgement for today's proceedings on behalf of OCAD University and those of us from Takaranto in Ontario. OCAD is one of the partners in the Crossing Fonds project. So I want to start by acknowledging that Simon Fraser University Surrey respectfully acknowledges the host nations and unceded traditional territories, including the Samianhu, the Katsi, and the Kwatlan and the Kwatlan, Hayatket and Tawasan nations on which SFU Surrey is located. In Toronto, Takaranto, we work, learn, live, and create on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississauga, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. And we also acknowledge the many Inuit and Métis and other First Nations people in that city. Takaranto has been a gathering place for Indigenous people for millennia. It is subject to the dish with one spoon, wampum belt covenant, whose spirit is really relevant to our dialogues at this symposium. A dish with one spoon refers to a concept developed by the Indigenous people of the Great Lakes region and northeastern North America. It was used to describe how land can be shared to the mutual benefit of all its inhabitants. It led to the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy made up of the Seneca, Cayuga, Oneida, Onondaga, and Mohawk nations. And the Anishinaabe, also very proximate in the region, comprised of the Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, Mississauga, Saulteaux, and Algonquin nations, also formed a confederacy, and they refer to a dish with one spoon as well. It was later the principle for agreements between Indigenous people and settlers in the region. It didn't go so well in that context. As one of the core values within the idea of a dish with one spoon is that those who use the land should not abuse the land. In other words, individuals and groups should only take what they need from the land so that there will be a healthy, long-term, sustainable environment. And the same is true regarding data, knowledge, governance, and cultural exchange. So the dish with one spoon requires equity and reciprocity. So I think it's an important context to think of as we look back and reflect at our work so far at this symposium, and we look forward today. They were certainly this notion of reciprocity and sharing, respect, responsibility, and care were powerful forces in our dialogue yesterday, which emphasized the importance of a culture of care. We really began with a discussion of Indigenous data sovereignty in all relationships, emphasized by work with residential school survivors and communities, and the ability to move institutions like UBC to accept communities undertaking their own research and retaining their records, and the university stepping back and understanding the importance of that is one of the great steps forward we learned about, and that does fit within the concept of the dish with one spoon for sure. We heard fantastic projects like the Indigenous print histories and the work with Saskatchewan urban Native teachers that are tracing Métis history, the river lots and the script system, and using maps, and a shout out to the opportunities to use Omeka S as a platform as a kind of digital homeland. We also heard that from an Indigenous perspective, there is no such thing as orphaned data, that data as orphans are should always be adopted and cared for. We heard about the Delusian fold, thanks. That was really fantastically performed and beautiful, and ideas of the fold as the wound, the shadow within the fold, and a whole set of incredible metaphors leading to the integration of Indigenous presence, both as a disruptor and a healer in the archive. And it was particularly fabulous to have the fold as a metaphor, given that Marian Dork's keynote in day one invoked the fold and Deleuze as a place of hidden data within the archive that needed to be protected and discovered. So I just thought it was, yay, Deleuze, for those of us who are of a certain age. Anyhow, it was just great to have Deleuze come full, like, trot back in. Anyhow, we had a number of panels. We explored the concept and a keynote that explored the culture of care, the importance of creating spaces. Okay, this is that. There, creating spaces for and with people with disabilities, and the notion that a record described by a community member, that a record description by a community member, some lesbian sat down and did it, being as important as the actual content itself, even if it was a misrepresentation. So this whole notion of kind of redescription and accuracy is really interesting in the context of archives and the work we're trying to do. We heard guideline after guideline in a good way of how to work effectively with and in community. And the notion that not everything needs to be accessed by everybody is like a really important concept. We had a rallying cry, which is, it's complex. It's complicated, it's complex. And that was a kind of agreement about the amount of care that's needed. I learned about the post-custodial archive. I hadn't fully understood that concept, the idea of caring for and preparing funds to return to communities. I think that's super interesting. We heard about consent as a continual negotiation in which individuals or groups share their knowledge and personal experiences, but can withdraw their data as circumstances change. And we heard about a kind of balance between researchers or archivists who were very protective of communities, but community members who actually wanted their histories and their data and their records to be available. We learned that Zoom is the medium, or video interviews is a medium of preference to share and level spaces and obligations, creating emotional distance and facilitating meaningful conversations in building archives. So there's a lot. I'm not going to be able to say everything, but we did end with a magnificent evening at Black and case study 3 led by Andrew Fatona, Myra Castro, Morodi George, and Hafiz Akin Lucy, with a tour of the Family First exhibition curated by Hafiz and a discussion of case study 3 led by Andrea, Myra, and Morodi, exploring the power of the family archive, comprised of family albums, genealogy, and oral histories, and the notion of memory objects, ones that represent the changing demographics of the greater Vancouver area. For me, there were finally two ideas that resonated. The need, again, to take time to build relationships to do this work. And the second, the value of the aesthetic of, quote, the banal or the mundane, unquote. I really love that idea. In other words, records that reveal the day-to-day experience, but also a context that speaks to a previous time. So this morning, and thank you very much. I know we are running late. We had our tech team who are here and with us, like some of others of you got delayed on public transit this morning. So we're going to discuss media art and art archives, principles and practices with two significant, quite different initiatives. We're going to start with Oliver. Sarah Beth, are you going first or is Oliver? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, we're going to start with Oliver Grau of ADA. I have to confess, whenever I think about a generous interface or generous archive, I think of Oliver's work and this amazing site, and it inspires me, and it inspired some of the ways that we have been trying to work with Omeka S. And you're going to see it and hear all about it. But I actually think it's one of the best places in the entire internet. Yay, Oliver. And he brings over 20 years as a chair and professorships in art history and image science at international universities. He's an elected member of the Academia Europaea. He's given more than 350 lectures, and I've heard some of them, and keynotes at conferences, including the Olympic Games Culture Program and the G20 Summit. Oliver founded and serves as director of the Internationally Extensive Archive of Digital Art, ADA, and he has published a book, Virtual Art from Illusion to Immersion, in 2002. I'm sorry, it was MIT Press. And it has 2,800 plus citations internationally and is the most quoted art history book since the year 2000. So Oliver, over to you.
Yes. Hello, Sarah from Vienna. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So grateful to be invited to Crossing Fonds conference, and impressive the report you just gave, what you all came across during the last few days. So grateful to speak in Vancouver again, this time virtual. Let's see how it goes. Evidently, I would have loved to be there with you guys to learn more on your initiatives and visions, having all those important background discussions and exchange on our tools and ethics, but also good to fly a little bit less. Okay, so compared to traditional art forms, digital media art has a multifarious and complex potential of expression and visualization, as we know. And therefore, although underrepresented at the art market, which follows other interests, it became, we might say, the art of our time, thematizing complex challenges for our life and societies like genetic engineering and post-human bodies, ecological crises like climate change, the image and media revolution, the virtualization of finance markets, migration, and new extremes of surveillance, just to name a few. So far, not museums, but festivals can be considered as the most important media for current developments regarding issues, technologies, and discussions on digital art. Although the biennial project of the ZKM revealed that digital artworks play a part at more than 200 biennials worldwide, and the systematic investigation of digital art festival themes within our projects lists over 150 additional festivals dedicated to this art form. Those complex art and image forms able to do that have almost not arrived into the core collecting institutions of our societies, the museums, archives, libraries, funded by us in Europe, at least the tax-paying public. So due to that fact that this art depends entirely on digital storage methods, which are in a constant state of change and development, digital art is severely at risk, as we know, and it is no exaggeration to state that we face the almost total loss of an art form from the early times of our post-industrial digital societies. So although by law, it is in Europe, for museums, the duty to collect, preserve, and document the art of its time, so that's a general law, is simply not done in an adequate and concerted way. This disparity in societies with an art system based on tax-paying citizens even creates a serious, I would say, democratic political problem. So this loss represents a great anachronism. On the one hand, the giants of social media, image storage, and its distribution from Facebook all the way to the secret services with their megalomanic image archive store and know everything about us, citizens. And on the other side, our public memory institutions, museums, archives, libraries, have relatively the smallest collection of contemporary culture, if it is digital, of any time during the last 240 years of their existence. So we know that museums were founded 240 years ago, and relatively to its time, it is the smallest portion of contemporary digital art, I would say, in them. Let me mention a few examples of digital art's potential for political iconography of our time. Our research projects identified thematic clusters empirically. Ada, for example, the archive of digital art documented thousands of artworks that make use of and express the complex and multifarious potential of media art. For example, issues of ecology and climate occupy an important place in festivals, and a number of key works in Ada focused on climate change. Classics of digital art, such as the virtual biotope Osmos by Canadian Charlotte Davies, created in '94 on Silicon graphics machines, shown worldwide and discussed in more than 200 publications, a citation record for an artwork, but you find it in no museum collection. I heard that now there's a new version of hers, and which now finally, after 25, 30 years, enters a few collections, hopefully. A very recent VR installation in the tradition of Osmos is Atmospheric Forest by writers Smits and Asa Smitte. Here, highly scientific data from various research contexts on the ancient high alpine forest suffering from drought. Data on tree emissions, for example, were transferred into a spatial atmospherical interactive online representation and emotional addressing of the senses of the viewer, an emotionally intelligent, better understanding of highly abstract processes such as climate change. Digital art reflects the developments of global financial markets. Golden Nika winner Paulo Sirio or Maurice Benayoun's Occupy Wall screens in 2012 strategically visualized global financial flows and networks in real time. At least since Edward Snowden's release of documents, we know that Facebook also is systematically used for NSA surveillance, but already David Rokeby's very nervous system and of 86 pinpointed the technological means of detection and surveillance. And Seiko Mikami, who passed away a few years ago in her robotic installation Desire of Codes 2011, dealt with this big issue of our time already before the worldwide espionage became known. Artists from the field of digital art use and reflect on a variety of technologies, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, or telepresence, as we know. For Unmakeable Love, 2007, inspired by Samuel Beckett's The Lost Ones, Jeffrey Shaw and Sarah Kenderdine used the cybernetic environment reactor to create a real-time augmented world of 30 simulated humans. Shaw himself mentions as an inspiration early cinema history, quote, the myriad of extraordinary devices like the Lumiere brothers Photorama, the Cyclorama, Cosmorama, Kineorama, Neorama, Uranorama, etc. But here they combine interaction with 3D humanoid phantasmagoric figures who seem to move in a dark space or even a prison camp formed by a hexagon of 6 rear projected silver screens for passive stereo viewing. This results in the most powerful reappearance of the phantasmagoria, 18th century augmented reality. Here it results in a deprivation, maybe even an icon for we humans in a Web 2.0 world of connected isolation. And of course, its allusions draw much wider to the human tragedies of the last century. Internationally renowned artists like Misha Kubal, Maurice Benayoun, William Kentridge, Raphael Lanzano Hammer, Michael Naimak, and others have created optical experiments, as we know, panoramas, phantasmagoria, dioramas, camera obscura, anamorphosis, magic lanterns, etc., reinterpreting old optical media. They contextualize and help to reflect on our digital image revolution, and which traditional art form could do that. The works mentioned produce their complexity through a set of temporal and spatial parameters, through multifarious creations of interfaces, and partly by evolving display innovations, variability through generative processes, simultaneity, I don't know how to pronounce it, sequentiality, narration, innovative strategies of interaction through real-time processing and immersive involvement. Extra content can be accessed through the use of visualizations, of databases and web-based networks, image spaces open for unfolding and compression, development or evolution, all represent important parameters for the research regarding the specific expressive potential of digital artworks and their imagery. In the best humanistic tradition, digital art frequently takes on big contemporary discussions, challenges, dangers, and proposed transformations of our time and society. We may call it a political iconography of the present. It is essential to create an understanding of the fact that the present image revolution, which uses new technologies and has also developed a large number of so far unknown visual expressions, cannot be conceptualized without our image history. Hence, scholars stress that the technological advances in current media cultures are best understood on the backdrop of an extensive media and art history. Therefore, we developed the International Conference Series on the Histories of Media, Art, Science, and Technology, which was started near you in Banff in 2005 through a collective process and a great cooperation with Sara Diamond, involving more than 10 disciplines related to media art, coordinating meanwhile more than 2,000 papers and applications on mediaarthistory.org. through the success of the following conferences every 2 years. Venice just happened last September. The conference of the field is well established. So coming now to the new tools, but it was important to contextualize this archival work that you better understand where it's coming from. So reflecting on new tools for media art histories in the 21st century, we remember Avi Warburg's Mnemosyne Atlas, tracking image citations of poses and forms across media, and most significantly independent from the level of art nouveau or genre. We might even say that he redefined art history as medial bridge building, arguing that art history could fulfill its responsibility only by including most forms of images, calling himself an image scientist. And let us remember too that film studies were started by art historians. The initiative by Alfred Barr and Erwin Panofsky founded the enormous film library at New York MoMA, the Vatican of Film, as it was called by contemporaries. The same spirit for new infrastructures, networks, and virtual museums for the media art of the last decades is needed today. Key projects for the digital humanities. So beginning in '98, we originated at Humboldt University the first online media art documentation, the database of virtual art, how it was called then, now Archive for Digital Art, ADA. As pioneer, it has been documenting in cooperation with renowned media artists, researchers, and institutions the last decades of digital installation art as a collective open source project. Since digital artworks are processual, ephemeral, interactive, multimedia, and fundamentally context-dependent, because of their different structure, they required a modified, we called it then an expanded concept of documentation. It's probably the most complex media art resource available, with almost 5,000 events, 1,000 institutions, 3,500 articles, and several thousand documented artworks and their technical data. ADA represents the scientific selection of 800 artists of approximately 5,000 evaluated artists. The policy whether an artist is qualified to become a member is simply the number of exhibitions, publications, at least 5. Then the artist can upload and keep always the sovereignty on the data. But board members like Christiane Paul, Roy Asket, Gunalanda Darayan can also recommend someone who created something unique and does not fulfill the normal criteria. And developed with the help of Austrian Science Fund, ADA was developed into a Web 3.0 research art archive. Artists and scholars contribute to the living archive and work collectively on documentation and analysis of media art with a set of new tools, a proactive process of knowledge transfer. You can also participate if you have 5 exhibitions or 5 articles. ADA uses some Facebook functions, transformed them so, wait a moment, so that it works for a living archive of artists and scholars. From the beginning, ADA also supported artists from minorities here, Canadian-born Yüksel Poon. Another feature is the Lightbox. It is a completely new developed tool that facilitates comprehensive image studies, especially intended for scholars and students. ADA also features every few months another artist among the best documented members in ADA. So it means in Jeffrey Shaw's case here that he has 140 artworks documented fully with videos and blueprints and soft and hardware documentation. And so if you would basically, if you would press the button, then a whole book would come out. So the material is very complex, and yes, and the whole oeuvre is there. And ADA also developed virtual exhibitions, allowing to document historic exhibitions from the field, enabling us to compare them online for our research, in this case here, Christiane Paul's Doc exhibition. ADA received, together with the Art University Linz and the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, 1.2 million euro grant to develop ADA into a research, and this is most important, a cost-free teaching tool for all art schools and as a key information resource for galleries and museums. So we also document interfaces and displays, as I mentioned already. So here, displays screens, all kinds of screens, so artistic inventions. So the software and hardware configurations, of course, and keywords and high-res visuals to allow internationally the next generation of artists to learn through access to the best information to give scholars the research resource they need, and museums, if they want to start a collection, the essential information so that they can see what was and is still out there. And as you know, that keywording can be bridge building too. The hierarchical thesaurus of Ada constitutes an approach to systemize the field of digital art. Out of the Getty Arts and Architecture thesaurus and the subject catalog of the Warburg Library in London, keywords were selected which have relevance also in media art. And on the other side, so these are this is the art historic side, so to say, and on the other side, out of the most common used terms from media festivals like Ars Electronica, ISEA, Transmediale, etc., new keywords were empirically selected, so important innovations such as interface or genetic art have been considered as well as keywords that play a role in traditional arts, such as these ever-existing words like body, landscape, or illusion, and thus have a bridge-building function. It was important though to limit the number to approximately 350 words so that members of the database can keyword their works without great study of a too complex index. But now, with Ada and AI, we will see how and whether AI can help the living archive, for example, in writing descriptive texts for the works and suggesting keywords. Ada is in the fortunate position that the vast majority of the artists represented are still alive and can critically edit or reject the AI suggestions, also with the keywords. And also we started empirical research too, as you see here, Jeffrey Shaw's related artworks to immersion and panorama visualized by my Brazil colleague Renato Souza. A second main step of contextualizing media art can be done based on the international unique situation that with the 45,000 prints of the Goethals collection, Ada has an important art historic collection in highest resolution, emphasizing Renaissance and Baroque works on its side, representing a library of 150,000 volumes going back to the 9th century. The Goethals collection is effectively an index of Renaissance and Baroque visual knowledge. Ada strives to achieve the goal of a deeper media art historical cross-pollination. This context will be explored deeper through the Thesaurus Bridge. Just as the Media Art Histories Conference series bridges a gap, the combination of the two and other art databases hopes to enable further historic references and impulses. The collection also contains proofs of the history of optical media, as you see here, intercultural concepts, caricatures, illustrations of landscapes and panoramic illustrations. For the future, this may provide resources for a broader and deeper analysis of media art. But today, not only media art itself, but also its scientific documentation phase, that future generations will not be able to get an idea of the art of our time. So that what we need is a concentration of high quality scholarly documentation, as well as a huge expansion of strengths and initiative. This precarious situation of media art research led to the International Media Art History Liverpool Declaration, signed by more than 500 scholars from 40 countries. So to date, you find it on the platform of the field, mediaarthistory.org. There is urgent need to create stable international platforms of interoperable archives to share resources, to build expertise for museum collection and resource. As you might have heard, Ada, Ars Electronica, ISEA, ZKM, SIGGRAPH, and others started the Connected Archives initiative to connect major archives, and the question remains, how broadly do we create the keyword bridges? Yes, quick connections can be established with artist names through Wikimedia, but in the medium term, we need to go for scientific keyword bridges trained, for example, on the Getty AAT and Warburg index, such as the Bridging Thesaurus, which enables connections into art history, and AI can help here maybe too. Coming already to the end. So what the worldwide museum community is more than 55,000 institutions strong, as you know. The US is more than 17,000 alone, Japan 5,700, Germany 6,000, and many in Canada too. However, digital art is not collected systematically in a concerted strategy by museums because the basic structures of the 240-year-old institution date back to a time when different artistic media prevailed. One strategy to enable the museum to fulfill its duties in a globalized and network democratic society would be the establishment of a concerted museum network of expertise and preservation. Although in Europe, most museums are financed by our taxes, they can't fulfill their official tasks in the range of digital contemporary art. The concerted collection policy would be located over the level of a single museum, and this meeting is a glimpse of such a development to overcome single institutional limitations to protect 21st century art endangered by a lack of personnel, budgetary, and technical restraints. A regional or nationwide network of expertise could help to preserve digital art with the systematic help of main strategies developed in case studies, strategies such as emulation, recreation, interpretation. But it depends on the will of those who are responsible for cultural policies. If only 5%, that's the idea, from Germany's 700 museums dedicated only to art would participate in a cross-federalized framework, Bavaria, for example, could say, with 5 museums, be responsible for the preservation of interactive installations and build up adequate expertise. Saxony, for example, for bioart, Brandenburg for net art, and so forth. This alliance could be informed in Germany by ADA, in Austria by Architectonica, in Switzerland by HEC, etc. We could help to protect not all, but the most important digital artworks and bring them into public discourse. This is a big task, but just one challenge in the wide range of digital strategies for the transforming institution museum. So this would help to protect not all, but the most important or some of the most important digital artworks and bring them into public discourse. The massive developments in digital-born media art and popular culture have been growing exponentially for decades now. Consequently, this requires that among the thousands of existing museums of traditional art media, a significant percentage of museums and archives must be dedicated to fulfill their fundamental functions to collect, preserve, explore, mediate, and taxonomize the digital cultures of the last decades. Media art also requires the owners of soft and hardware companies of new social networks who are in a position and responsible to help museums to preserve art on the technology that made them rich. What is needed is an appropriate structure to preserve at least the usual 1 to 6% of media art production. I'm not talking about everything, but just what came from the art of the past towards us. And people say that's about 1 to 6% of all the art production. And if we would achieve this number in digital art, would be already great. So to achieve this we need a concerted policy of collection and preservation on a much larger scale, appropriate to serve digital culture of 21st century. As we see, and coming to the end, media art needs as many bridges as possible. Conferences like this one here, new scientific tools like database and text repositories, new strategies for documentation and visual analysis of complex data, new curricula for the next generation of teachers and collectors. Maybe in the near future, we can create collective tools as represented in Sara Millionneau's 20-year-old work, The Living Web, as you see above, which generates a spatial information sphere from search engines for web images in a cave, or Sara Kenderdine's interactive visualization knowledge evolution below, representing a new instrument for visual analysis with the option of comparing up to 1,000 images in a scientific discussion. Captivating new visualization tools could provide access to the breadth of digital cultural production, coupled with the depth of historical optical media, new unpredictable understandings of today's image revolution, and the role technology and media play can be enabled. Thank you so much for the attention and having me.
Thanks so much, Oliver. That was just a fantastic, kind of background and showing the discrepancy between the incredible work by new media artists over, 3-4 decades now, and the lack of collection and what the opportunities are also with emerging platforms and technologies. So stay tuned because we're going to have some Q&A later, but now we're going to go to Sara Beth Seymore. Sara Beth is the program director, program officer, archiving and data services at the Internet Archive. Sara Beth supports community programs, and we were very excited to learn about CARTA. Really thank my colleague Paul Eber for pointing it out as an initiative. So CARTA is the Collaborative Art Archive and Community Webs. And so Sara Beth's going to share with us some of what CARTA is. And before she was at the Internet Archive, Sara Beth was academic librarian for a decade, specializing in digital collections, yay, metadata, and digitization. So she's going to talk about the Collaborative Art Archive.
Good morning. Start my timer. Thank you, Sara, Dr. Diamond, and Sydney for the wonderful organization and all the presenters so far. I've really enjoyed the conversations. I was just reflecting on this is my first conference since before the pandemic, my in-person conference. So it's been a very nice way to ease back into this aspect of my professional life and presenting again. So thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm very excited to talk about the Collaborative Art Archive. Like Sara said, I'm Sara Beth Seymore. I'm a program officer at the Internet Archive. And if you're unfamiliar with us at the Internet Archive, it's been mentioned a couple times since we've started the symposium. But we are a nonprofit library with millions of free books, movies, software, and websites that we preserve. Many of folks know us from the Wayback Machine, which is where we preserve a lot of the internet. We've been preserving the internet since 1996 and have over 28 years of web history accessible through the Wayback Machine. We work with over 1,200 libraries and other partners through our Archive It program, which is the software which helps us archive the web. And CARTA is a project that utilizes the resources of the Internet Archive and the professional expertise from a collaborative group. So CARTA is a project that utilizes the Internet Archive, the resources, the technical resources of the Internet Archive, the staffing of the Internet Archiving, but also the professional expertise of a collaborative group of arts and cultural heritage professionals in order to build archive web collections of web-based content related to art history and contemporary art practice for art historical research in the future. Community programs is, CARTA is situated within community programs at the Internet Archive, just to provide some context about why are we doing more collaborative programs from a very traditional, just like archiving service provider. Community programs supports collaborative development of web-based collections through a couple different programs that we have. So we have CARTA, like I mentioned, I'm going to be sharing more about. We have community webs, which would actually be really interesting to talk about at this conference as well, just because it is focusing on local history collecting with local historical societies and public libraries and all that. So I've learned so much from all of you. I'm going to be taking that back to that program. And we also have the COVID-19 Web Archive. So as I said, these programs utilize the Internet Archive staffing and services. We are doing many things, like myself, facilitating the flow of communication amongst all of our program teams, doing the web archiving itself with our team of web archivists and our engineering team, doing the more technical work, of course, generating the research data sets, building the access portals, doing metadata integration with other services. And this allows CARTA to focus on the collaborative aspects of our membership, the power of that, in order to do this web archiving that can achieve a scale that's not possible individually at a single institution to do, but leverages the entire collaborative member expertise. Some more about the project origins. So it began initially as a collaboration between the Internet Archive and the New York Art Resources Consortium, or NYARC, in 2006. Well, NYARC, excuse me, formed in 2006 and began this sort of consortial program with web archiving with the Museum of Modern Art, the Frick Collection, and the Brooklyn Museum of Art in NYC. So NYARC members, especially their head of web archiving, Sumitra Duncan, who's been a really vital collaborator for CARTA, reached out to the Internet Archive and was interested in scaling up what NYARC is doing to a larger level, of course, to do more collection of art history online. And something that wasn't just specific to NYC or other urban areas in the States, and also not just concentrated within the United States. They began an official partnership and in 2018 got a grant from the IMLS, which allowed our work to start convening, begin doing environmental scans, doing outreach, bringing art librarians together to discuss how this collaborative model could work. The Internet Archive in Nyack were fortunate to receive 2 additional grants in 2021 from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the IMLS again to continue this work, and CARTA was officially launched in August 2021, excuse me. And at that point, we were able to formalize our collaborative group and begin building the collections. We've made a lot of progress since 5 years, in the 5 years that we've received our first grant. And the overall goals of CARTA have been to promote access to a digital art reference research and research materials, enable new types of scholarly use for art-related resources, ensure that the art historical record of the 21st century is readily available for research use far into the future. Excuse me. And the goals of CARTA have been to encompass community building, collection building, facilitating research and access methods, and sustainability and promotion. Those have been our overall goals as well. So within the past 2 years, we've really focused on member recruitment, having those collaborative meetings and discussions, so having all group meetings and forming subcommittees to do other work within the initiative, like our metadata subcommittee, our collection development subcommittee, which has been really vital for building the collections. And we've also focused on, of course, getting the web archive collections going by developing a nomination process, which is still our workflow today, and I'll show that in a moment. I want to talk about our participants. So within the first year, we exceeded our goal of gathering 30 members. And now we have a program of 41 diverse members. I'll make sure that's not, did my screen share? Okay, we're good, sorry. Now we have 41 members across the United States and Canada. And these range in different types of institutions, from small art museums, regional museums, academic institutions, national museums, and arts organizations. And we do have mostly American and Canadian institutions, but we are really interested in expanding internationally, not just in membership, but also within the expertise of those members, and the content, the preservation of those other regional areas within our collections. We have, after our initial convening in 2018, in the discussion from the art librarians, it was decided that 8 web archive collections would be created, and our nominations for web archiving would fall within these 8 collections, and they're listed here. Art criticism, arts education, arts fairs and events, art galleries, art history and scholarship, arts organizations, artist websites, and auction houses were seen to be the important collections for our librarian members. And the descriptions were created by our collection development subcommittee, so they helped form these. The members began archiving websites in November of 2021, so we have now reached over 2 years of collecting. And now, like I said, we are still collecting, and we do a quarterly nomination process where members submit websites to archive like on a quarterly basis, and that's kind of how we're tracking our progress so far. One other thing that we did, which was part of our outreach and reuse, a focus on reuse of our collections, was creating a series of workshops and datathons, as we call them, for how to use the data that was created by the CARTA collection. So how to use data analysis and web archiving tools while utilizing the data sets that we created. We had a high level of success at these workshops. We had 3. And the goals were to help librarians and archivists and digital humanists start determining how they might use web archives for computational analysis. And these workshops shared how to identify and support research use cases that would benefit from web analysis to get started. So these were workshops very much targeted for folks who were just beginning to think about how to use web archives in their research, and support researchers at their institutions who wanted to use web archives. We also released a white paper called CARTA Promoting Computational Research with Art on the Web, and our data sets that we used in our workshops, and which we also have tutorials published online as well, are accessible at archive.org. So this is our nomination process, just to talk more about the nuts and bolts of how we work. This is our workflow here. Nominations are submitted through an online form just available to members. This is integrated with a shared Google Space and Slack space as well. So there's instant notification, as I'm sure you can all understand, of a new nomination coming in. This allows members to easily track what is what's a new nomination, what are the collection stats, and keep an eye on any missing gaps they might want to add to the collections. We have specific fields in the nomination form that flag a site as urgent or at risk, which is pretty common. And we found this was common, especially post, well, after the pandemic, when a lot of arts organizations and artist websites have since disappeared. If it's something is flagged urgent, we typically start crawling that, archiving it within 24 hours, because I catch that and the web archivist catches that as well. After the archiving process is completed, we do a quality control process to make sure websites are captured with the best results possible. Pretty tricky, the web is pretty dynamic, and I think you can all kind of attest to sometimes the success of that and sometimes not. There's also an option on the form for the nominator to select if they want us to contact the website owner. If possible, sometimes it's just like a contact us here form. I am the person who does that if they select that they want to ask for permission first. And so that's usually like a 2-week wait process. And then if we don't hear anything, we do proceed with archiving. And then at the kind of just being safe at the end of that process, we do have a takedown policy, of course, if anyone does want to reach out, and we will take things down as needed. Finally, once the archive process is complete, the websites are integrated with our portal, which I'll show next, which has basic metadata that's also been provided from the nomination form. And this is provided by the metadata subcommittee of CARTA, which did a lot of work normalizing and creating metadata, which is helping with search and discovery on our portal. On the form also, there is a selection for crawl frequency. So we can iteratively crawl websites as and update websites as new content is coming online, just to make sure we're capturing the latest updates on those sites. An important note here I like to stress for CARTA is that you don't need to be an expert in web archiving to participate. And I think this is one of the benefits of the program, especially since art librarians are doing so much, they're reference, collection development, often asked to take over, especially I can think of academic institutions take over duties of their colleagues. So it's a nice way to offer web archiving as an expertise to them and have them involved in that process. This is a breakdown of our collections. So right now we have over 900 websites after about 2 years of collecting, like I said, and 16 terabytes of data. Most of our websites are falling under arts organizations and artist websites, which, like I said, those websites, those two categories, collections have the highest number of at-risk websites we found during, as we were building the collections. And this is our portal. This is just the homepage. I'm afraid of live demos, so I just put screenshots in here. So please visit our site and let us know what you think. We launched the portal in April 2023, so it's not too old now. And this is providing unified access to all of the CARTA collections. I think another example of our collaborative spirit is our CARTA logo, which was designed by one of our librarians, Rachel McPherson at the National Gallery of Art. And the portal also has aggregated art-related collections from Archivate members who wanted to opt in to share their collections with CARTA. So that is an additional 70 collections and 20 terabytes of data from our other Archivate partners. So the portal allows users to browse and search across all of these collections. They can also search by contributing organizations, collection, of course, site, and there is more advanced searching where you could search within like particular page text or within a particular date range as well. And we also have the filters or the facets on the left side. Again, very standard librarian stuff made possible through from our metadata subcommittee. This is what this might look familiar to you if you've used the Wayback Machine before, but this is where you can access the different archive instances of a website over time. So a user can go to a particular date and time, select that point in time and look at the website, and it should function, look and feel of how it did the day that it was archived. This is an example of one. So this is the website for Arts Views, which is a Boston area independent online arts magazine. This was nominated by one of our partners, Walker Art Center. And like I said, it should look and function like it did the day that it was captured, but we do have the box at the top, which gives some basic information about just letting users know that this is an archive site and some basic information about the collection. I'm doing for time. I wanted to briefly share some focuses of our members, which is the coolest part of the project, of course, what folks are collecting. So this is a slide that was created by our partner Getty Research Institute and Megan Salabedra, who is our contact there, or our member there. So this, the Getty Research Institute is focusing on Southern California artists and organizations, and Megan creates a particular theme that she likes to focus on each quarter. So she's gathering these nominations and these suggestions from her lived experience in LA, being involved in the art scene, her colleagues, and some of the themes that she's focused on so far include art writing and publishing, arts education, Southern California desert art sites, alternative art fairs, and art spaces in domestic settings. She also prioritizes at-risk sites as needed, of course. And these are some recent archived projects, websites. We have the Los Fotos project at the top there, the top left, which has a mission to elevate voices of teenage girls and gender expansive youth from communities of color in Los Angeles through photography. Golden Spike Press. I'm sorry, I'm a little froggy this morning. The joys of a morning presentation. We have Golden Spike Press, which is a collaborative publishing project for it's based at Cal Arts and specializes in artist books and multiples produced on Risograph. And there's also the Black Arts Center, the Black Image Center, excuse me, which is a collective group of young Black photographers in Los Angeles. Wanted to also feature the Maryland Art Institute, who in our contact there is Heather Slania, the director of the Art Library. They focus on archiving the diverse and vibrant art scene of Baltimore, aiming to preserve the rich contributions of artists for future generations. They also like to focus on their alumni, like TT the artist, and significant local arts events like Artscape. And they also like to prioritize emerging and historically underrepresented artists like those in the Black Artist Research Space, or BARS. One thing that Heather is also really interested in, is the web as a creative medium. And one example is a recent companion website to the Baltimore-based experimental film All Light Everywhere. In this capture, I think I have the video, I hope it works. I need to click. I wanted to demonstrate the dynamic capture of this website. It's not working. Well, sorry about that. Well, this was a short video that showcased how the web archive capture of this site did. It's okay. Did showcase the interactivity of a user in the browser. So have like pop-ups, and there's an image, there's video, there's audio, and we were able to
show a site if you can help.
It was just like a 14-second clip, but okay.
You set it up.
Please go check it out at CARTA. All right. The best wishes. There's so many more, and I liked what Oliver was talking about, kind of like the scaling of this work. And one thing I like about CARTA specifically is that members can kind of choose how much they want to zoom in or zoom out for the preservation of art historical collections and for art historical scholarship in the future. So just to provide some other examples, the University of Hawaii, for instance, their librarian is just really interested in capturing the websites of Native Hawaiian artists. But we have other members who are interested in sort of the larger events and just documents that are going to be really useful for art historical research in the future. Like we have the National Gallery of Art, they're really interested in auction houses. So that's what they select to archive. The Clark Art Institute, and also in the States, they are just interested in preserving the websites related to the Venice Biennale. So they're like going ham right now with their nominations because it's happening. But these are also all really important for the picture of like the greater picture of art historical research, the big and the small. And I like how members can really decide what they want to contribute to the archive. So our next steps. Lots going on right now. We are, of course, want to continue to grow our collections and our membership. So we ended our grant periods at the end of summer of last year. And we are transitioning from, grant-based subsidization to a membership model for our members. We did develop this model based off of months of conversation with them and feedback. And we do hope that it will continue. We do think it will continue to allow new members and growing of our collections. We're also fortunate to have continued support and expertise from NIARC and Sumitra Duncan, a very important collaborator for us. And we've created some self-governance within the group since we're moving to this new kind of phase of projects of the program. So we've created an advisory board and have reconvened some of the original subcommittees to do documentation work that is good for just kind of operating on our own now. Like, we didn't have a collection development policy. We had these 8 collections, everything kind of fit nicely. But now that we're operating in a new way, wanting to grow some more, we needed to create a collection development policy. And that's like at our membership right now, getting feedback. So we're going to talk about it like next week. So very much in process there. And one other thing, the advisory board and the collection development policy is interested in doing is an audit of our collections. So even though, like I said, I think a benefit of our program is being able to like select what you want, but then also see how it can contribute to the greater picture. We do have gaps, especially in membership and regional areas of collecting. So we would like to do an audit to identify those areas where we could potentially add more to our collections and our membership. Also more grant opportunities. Yeah, always interested in getting more funding to help us do what we have to do. Interesting to hear the conversations about funding for sustainability that have been going on. We are like right there as well. So we did apply for a grant and we tried to kind of bake in sustainability in a way, in kind of a discreet way. We'll see if it works. We should hear back soon. That was with the Crest Foundation. So we'll see about that. And yeah, I just want to take a moment to thank all of our members. It wouldn't be possible without their contributions. NIARC and the Internet Archive, of course, for their support. And yeah, please be in touch if you have any interest or questions, feedback. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Sarah Beth. I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions of clarification. That was a fabulous presentation, and it's a really ambitious, that really, great project. So are the only sites that you consider ones that are nominated by your members?
For now, yes. We are interested in doing more of like a communal nomination process where we could open it up for other contributions, like from artists, for instance, or other organizations who are interested in nominating their site for preservation. So in our recent collection development policy, we've developed like basically the framework for that. But we haven't done anything of that nature yet, of like getting those contributions from like greater other public members that aren't just members, but there is interest in that.
Just a couple more things. So, and are the sites only ones that are shut down or about to shut down, or is this, no, okay, I understood correctly. And do you go back into the Internet Archives and the Wayback Machine to retrieve things? Like if somebody nominates something that used to exist, but it's no longer available, it's not just about to shut down, but it no longer is available. Do you have, because of your relationship with the Wayback Machine and the Internet Archives, are you able to kind of, I guess, excavate archaeologically, so to speak?
We can because of the work file format. So that is the preservation file format, where if we did needed to like, migrate or do some sort of format transition in the future, given like preservation standards change in the future, we could do that. And we are, pulling from the work files to do our more instructional database datathons and workshops as well. Those are the computational data sets we're using for that goal that we also have. I
have other questions, but I see lots of folks out there. So our number for Oliver, who cannot see, our numbers have grown over the course of the morning. So you have a good audience here and also folks online. Are there questions? This is a bit of a different, you know, a kind of different kind of conversation than we've had in the last few days. Yeah, I see a question. Oh, great. Yay.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. So, Oliver, I was familiar with your work. I wrote about the Phantasmagoria this past semester in my graduate program. So very cool to hear you speak this morning. I think my question is kind of drawing on both these presentations and what we've been hearing the past 3 days. And I'm thinking about, you know, how can digital archives themselves be considered as digital art, given the work that's going into them and all of these intricate processes of making sure that these things are preserved. Like, I think it could perhaps get very meta, but it seems interesting as a way or almost a thought experiment, or perhaps even another avenue for funding. But how are these things also art themselves?
Oliver, over to you.
Oh, okay. Oh, goodness. I have also a whole bunch of questions to Sara, Beth, and first I want to congratulate her. And I can really not answer this question, how much digital art archives would be can be considered themselves as art projects. I would deny that. And since our goal, we come from more from scholarship and art history, media studies, and so on, is to provide to create a research base and to provide other researchers or the artists themselves to see what are the other people doing, and also museums to give a showcase or the idea what's out there, and so on. And the idea of making us as an art project, then we wouldn't be taken so seriously. I don't know, from some people who are important as money givers, and I wouldn't like that. So, but maybe it's different for you, Sarah Beth.
Yeah, and maybe Sarah Beth will answer, and then we're kind of decent with time, so I'm going to ask you, Oliver, to ask your questions of Sarah Beth, because I'm sure we'd love to hear you to engage in conversation. So Sarah Beth, are you creating an art project?
I think that's a cool idea, and I would like very much welcome an artist to explore it, especially since, you know, we want to continue preserving it and make it open access. I think those are very important resources for artists, and I think working with art librarians, they would be totally jazzed with that idea. So yeah, I don't know if we were going to do anything specifically to like make it easier for artists to reuse. We do still have our mission, like Oliver said, but yeah, an interesting thought. Thank you.
I mean, the way to think about it perhaps is that the entities in themselves are not art projects, but as other archives now do, you could commission artists to create interfaces and experiences that draw from both of these archives, right? And find other points of entry from an artistic point of view. Oliver, questions for Sarah Beth. Take it away.
Yeah, congratulations to this, a very impressive talk, and it's mostly impressive material also. So I was also reading a little bit on Wikipedia and so on the project. And I heard there are also some copyright issues, and maybe you can also comment a little bit on that. So I wonder what the final goal is, since you have all these different collections, and is it like that you would like to become a kind of another Europeana, you know, where the European Union has these 50 million objects, but where you then can search under Picasso, and then you go to this collection and that collection and this collection, and then you see what's all out there? Or is it just a big dump in the end? So to say this word, that's probably not appropriate, but is it a big pail? So do you plan to go scientifically towards it, and then maybe also ask for the money from National Science Foundation or Getty? Also, maybe Getty could create a kind of a North American Europeana, with including Mexico and so on. Since the way you created all this material, and especially with the Wayback Machine, you have already this great tool. This could be really a showcase of the whole culture of North America and beyond.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, that's a lot of questions. I'll try to answer all of them.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Oh, it's my turn. Thank you. I think right now we are still just focusing on web archives. So that kind of Europeana model of connecting out and also having like other greater digital collections, I would say is more replicated in the States by like DPLA, the Digital Public Library of America, and probably more fragmented than it is with our European colleagues, with how digital collections are hosted and distributed online in America. So for CARTA, just to clarify, we are just going to focus on web archives. We don't have any plans to connect with other online initiatives. Would be really cool to have like the Wikipedia, the Wikidata backend to do that linking, totally understand the interest there, but I think we're still just trying to preserve websites and make sure we're like capturing that as it is a medium for artistic expression, gathering information about these arts organizations in the States. And right now, yeah, just growing our members and adding more to our collections. Like I said, we do have gaps in our collections, especially I think what stands out the most to me is like the American South, Appalachia. We don't have a lot of participating organizations and members there. And there's a lot of artistic expression and stuff happening there, especially maybe more of a focus on underrepresented artists as well. We do have members who are very interested in that in their localized area, but we aren't really, we haven't had an initiative so far to think about that across CARTA. And that's something I'm very interested in as well.
Oliver, did you have other questions for Sarah Beth?
Yeah, maybe also, a question which might be also kind of a suggestion, since we have also the same problem for the sustainability, but maybe in your case it might be easier to ask one of these Academy of Sciences, since they have these 50-year, sometimes even 100-year projects, which will be all dead when they're over. But in Europe there are some of these long-time projects, and maybe even if you show them what the richness of your collections, what you have there, and even would address the idea that could also include some material from the history of science and the history of technology, which also would connect with the conference series Sara and I created. And this could be another opener, so to say, to these long-term supportive institutions.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't considered that. So thank you very much. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Is that okay? I'm really curious if you could share more about just how you deal with the technical aspects of archiving so many different formats. We're just working in one format as the work file, as I said, web archives as the medium, as the format. But it seems like you're saving video, audio, still images to kind of recreate the whole experience, especially if it's like a performance art piece. I'm just curious how you manage that. Like, do you have an engineering team? It seems like you have other institutional support, but just I'd love to hear more information about that because that's really challenging.
Sorry, maybe I was a little bit fast with that, but we just document. We do not archive hardware, software. We document which software was used, which hardware was used for an artwork. We have the videos. The artists upload the material themselves. At the moment, we just the technology is a big issue. Since over 25 years existence, we had various changes of the databases, and this is always a nightmare. And at the moment, we are finally in the process of changing from typo 3 to a graph database which we have more granularity and then can more easily visualize the results or the things you want to visualize. But yeah, technology is an issue, and we have two programmers in this last project, but this is never enough.
Oliver, I think one of the strengths of AdaNet is the ability for curators and academics and teachers to use it as a research space. And the Lightbox function in particular, where you can pull out item sets or items and then order them. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the kind of uses that you're seeing by researchers and curators and some of the outcomes of those. You gave a great holistic overview in history, but I think that function, given the community here, would be of particular interest. Because there's a lot of archivists here who support researchers, and I think they'd love to hear about a bit more about that function.
which is also at the moment there we have two new functions which go along with the light box. I didn't mention it's based on Mirador, where you fly through a kind of a space and then you point on different flying objects, which are images or videos, and then you can put them back into this light box where you can compare a number of different objects. And this is the old idea of art history, where you have lineages of developments and which you then can show or understand through the comparison of various images. Our focus groups or target groups are students, of course, art historians, media studies people, artists, who especially for example, if they are if they study in Vienna, then this really happened so too often. Some artist comes with the idea of a brand new interface, and then after considering Ada or after considering also other databases, this person realized, oh shit, this idea was already 15 years or so developed by this and that person, and so it's very important that we create tools where artists, when they are in their process of education, that they learn or that they have an ability to understand what 15 years or 20 years or 30 years before was created by other artists. And most of the cases in most art schools, this knowledge is simply lost, and they reinvent the wheel again and again, and actually don't make a lot of progress. But if they know what the forerunners have done, they can recombine the old ideas and create something new on top. And so this is also a very important group. And then also another focus is the museum world, as I mentioned, with this project. The Ministry of the Federal Ministry in Berlin announced that they would like to give a seed money, like 11 million euro. The same what they did for the digitization of the German film heritage, where they would support such a network, as I mentioned earlier, where we have 5% of these 700 museums. And this is in an early state, but of course there's not the idea to dictate this museum has to collect this and this museum has to collect that. But it's in the end it's decided by the curators, but it's good to have a kind of an overview, put it on a higher level. So since the individual museums, they are this is too much work for them. They cannot deal with this enormous amount of artworks which is out there. So we think we need to put it on a higher level, and therefore Ada is also an information source. I don't know if this was all.
No, that's fantastic, and I think that kind of almost public policy role that you personally have played, but also Ada Net has played as a kind of convener of that conversation, and that strategy is really fantastic.
The second question is from Jay, and it's for Oliver. Do you believe that the role of donations and the relationship between collectors / the art market in the background of museums have a role to play in the lack of digital art collection? Digital works are often determined to be less attractive to collectors and lack the history of existing markets compared to other mediums such as painting, which deeply inform collecting and donation.
I think they're not less attractive, but if you're a collector, then you always have this issue, this problem. Shall I buy it and risk that in 2 years I cannot show it anymore because I cannot guarantee, or there's nobody who guarantees the maintenance of an interactive artwork, for example. Or the more complex the digital artwork is, the less is the more difficult it is to sell it and also to collect it, and therefore also a side function of this project, which I just mentioned, digital art to museums, would be that we then would come up with a maintenance strategy for these artworks in the museums, obviously, but this network of maintenance could then also guarantee for galleries who sell artworks. Or give some kind of certificate, like when you buy a car, for example, then you can go to a shop after a while. You have a guarantee on that, and some system. And I don't have the final idea at the moment, but I think we need a kind of a system where collectors have a guarantee that when they buy an artwork, then this is somehow kept up for more than 2 years. And I think this is the main problem. And yeah.
I mean, that is, I do a lot of work in the public art space in both policy and also, sometimes on the curatorial level. And it's the same question with public art, with, new media public art, is how one ensures that there is either there's a clear duration and kill point, at which point it's archived and has another life, either with ADA or hopefully with ADA, but also potentially with the city or whatever site commissioned it, even if it's a private space, or that, the artist is able to provide the means to transport it into other updated media over time, and really makes that pathway possible with the collecting agency. So I think, it's both in the public realm where we're seeing that challenge, and also in terms of collectors. And in Canada and in the US, like, there's a pattern where individuals with wealth will buy an artwork and donate it to the gallery because they get a massive tax write-off, for that. So it's also that dynamic too, about whether people are comfortable buying something that is more potentially ephemeral, and their name will not be on it forever in an evident way in that collection going forward. So I think there's a number of inhibitors, and I see a question here. I'm going to go.
I would add to that. Hi, thank you for both of your presentations. I would add to that issue is actually already part of the art market and relationships between artists who have been creating in, ephemeral or specific materials. Dan Flavin, for example, Yoko Ono. I mean, we have actually been doing this for physical works. So I hear that pushback all the time, but I actually don't think that it is an issue. I think it's been there all the time with a lot of physical materials as well.
Yeah, let me comment on that. I mean, there's a preservation industry for art historic paintings. It's gigantic. It's $1 billion market around the world. But for the digital artworks, this is not developed. There are small companies now, very small companies, who specialize in emulation or in preservation of a certain interface or so. But this is and then they're really specialized. But there's no general market as for materials and for metal or something in sculptures or something. It's much easier there, the preservation. Sorry to say that, although they're complex chemical processes, but it's still much easier than preserve a digital artwork which is older than 10 years.
Yeah, there's nodding in the room with you, Oliver, as you're saying this. Are there other questions or comments? We've got
a
one
few more
online.
yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Sydney.
Okay, so this one is also for Oliver from Anonymous. If I have a nomination for a few prolific artists to be included into ADA, do you need to go through a formal application via the ADA website? And could you detail what the processes are for somebody who's an artist and not part of an institution?
Oh, it's totally easy. You just register on the website, and you should show that you have at least 5 exhibitions and or articles. This is our very simple gatekeeping system to prevent from every newcomer who then would start a discussion. Why I'm not in the archive? Can you tell me? So it's very simple. So if you have that, then you are automatically qualified. And if you don't have that, but still are considered by the board, for example, since you have created a totally unique interface or something, then you still can get into the archive. But it's very simple. So after 1 day, you can start uploading.
Thank you. And second question?
The last one is also for Oliver, and it's also anonymous. What are your thoughts about NFT art stored on a blockchain as a method of funding for ADA?
Yeah. I don't...
Oliver's face is projected writ large to the audience as he thinks about that question.
Yeah, I don't have a final answer to that. I mean, I think partly it's so starting with that, it's a little bit ironic that all these great artists in the past, so big names, who were like John Davies or so, for example, and who were discussed and shown in big places and so on, that they did not sell a lot of their artworks, basically nothing. And there are also many other artists, and nowadays they have the opportunity to recreate their artwork with the NFT connection, which may then create a kind of a share where they sorry, where they finally make some money, and I think it's understandable and appropriate, and it's okay. But I think the original idea of many digital artists was to create some kind of anti-art, so where the big figure of the artist is shrinking a little bit, and where a lot of the art power goes to the former onlooker, to the interactor, to which now can playfully interact and is part of the creation of the artwork, and therefore this whole NFT idea is fairly antagonistic. It's typical for our time, but I'm not very supportive to that, and yeah.
So thank you very much. We're at time. What a great two fabulous presentations and a really nice back and forth between the presenters and good questions and commentary. So thank you, Oliver, for joining us from Europe. And thank you, Sara, Beth,